again to Millside. So today we're doing a comparison between the Unitank All-Rounder and the Conical. Both of these made by KegLand. Whether you're new to brewing or you experienced, there really is nothing better than actually seeing the fermentation process in action. You know, if you've got a stainless steel fermenter or a bucket or something like that, you don't really get to see what's happening. Whereas with these units, you can actually physically see the entire process unfolding. Now the main differences between these units, well, where do we start? The All-Rounder comes in a 30 and a 60 litre. The Conical comes in a 27 and a 55 litre. If you're buying the All-Rounder, it's highly recommended to actually buy the bridle strap. Now the reason is when you pick the unit up with the handles, the stand doesn't go with. On the Conical, you get the handles so you can pick the whole unit up. Although on the bigger units, you'll notice we have a strap in there. Highly recommended. You know, if that unit gets bumped, knocked, much easier to recover from that with that bridle strap. So that's the one thing. Obviously, the design of the stands are totally different, and that's more to accommodate the whole valve system at the bottom. And obviously, when you're opening and closing this valve, there's pressure on the unit. So KegLand's obviously stabilized all of that with the stand. In terms of the lids, they're identical. Now, when you buy both of these units, you're going to get a standard lid, and that basically just comes... let me just get my tool. By the way, invest in one of these tools if you're buying either one of these units. It just makes removing the lid so much easier. So you're going to get obviously the ring, and then you're going to get the lid. It has two caps on it, a closing cap and one to accommodate the airlock. And a pressure release valve. For those of you who don't know what this does is, when you pull it up, it releases or vents pressure in both units. And they set to 2.4 bar, and then it's going to start getting rid of pressure. You would also use this valve, particularly on the All-Rounder. When you're wanting to dry hop, you would release pressure, unscrew the cap, drop your hops in, close it up again, and then obviously you can vent out the oxygen, attach your CO2 to it. But now what you need to remember, if you're purchasing either one of the units and you want to do pressurized fermentation, you do need to buy the extras that go with them. And I'll get into that in a sec. The first other thing just to notice is the height differences. Now we've got a Plato airlock on this one, and you can see already this unit's still higher. And I haven't even put the airlock on there yet. So just bear that in mind, depending where you put in that unit. If you have space restrictions, make sure you check your sizes before you buy. Now, if you're going to do pressurized fermentation, you're going to need some carbonation caps. And on this unit, you're only going to need your liquid and your gas. On this line, it's advisable to also have on the bottom yeast containers. So you're going to need extra caps. Bear that in mind. Everything screws on quite easily on these. Basically just standard thread and screws in like that. Now, if you're purchasing both of these units and you want to put the extras like temp twister or thermowell, you're going to need to make some modifications. So you can either do that by buying the pre-drilled cap, or lid I should say, and that way it's quick and easy to install. Or if you've got the standard lid, it's got a bunch of dimples on the inside here, and you're going to need to drill it out. Now make sure when you're drilling these that you drill the correct size on both sizes. I mean on both tanks. It's not going to make a difference. The temp twister has a different size Duotite to the thermowell, so just remember that. In fact, if you look on the pre-drilled one, you'll notice there's for the temp twister and there's for the thermowell, so just remember that. If you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. You don't need to throw that lid away. You can actually put in a Duotite with an end block, but rather just try and get that drilled correctly the first time. So anyway, once you've got all that on, again on both systems, you're going to be using the same components, the same carbonation caps. The other thing to bear in mind is if you are actually doing pressurized fermentation, you're going to need to allow for a spunding valve, which looks something like this. Or you can have a more sophisticated version, something like that. But in either event, you're going to need either one of them. Now, if you're using the standard disconnect, you'll notice, let me just put a carbonation cap on. Okay, you need to allow for that extra height. Okay, but now KegLand does have some new Duotites, and Millside's obviously lucky enough to have access to some of those. They were just recently released, and that's the 90-degree Duotite disconnects, and they come in both liquid and gas. Now that's a lot better because it's now, you can see, lowers the whole height profile of the unit a lot. So consider that when you are purchasing these units. Again, just to make sure the height restrictions you might have measured but not accounted for, putting a spunding valve or whatever the case is. The units can have jackets on them. You can see this larger unit's got KegLand's jacket. They're actually pretty amazing. It's like a real space blanket on the inside, nice thick insulation in between the walls, and a nice durable thick jacket with a drawstring at the bottom so you can close it in nicely. In terms of the bottom of the Conical, you can see it's totally different to the all-rounder. Now that brings me to the next point. If you're wanting to remove your yeast and cold store and dispense from the unit, then the all-rounder is not the unit for you. Once you finish with your fermentation, you're going to have to put that into a keg. You know, if you're distilling, obviously it's not a problem, into the still. But if you're doing beer, bottle it, put it in a keg. This unit, you do have the option now to remove that yeast using the yeast container here. And that would just quite simply be opening the valve, let all the yeast and contaminants come out, close the valve. That can go into cold storage and you can dispense from it, pressurize it to whatever you want. Obviously with pressurized fermentation, it's already mostly carbonated. You might need to make adjustments, but generally speaking, it's a much easier process. So that's one big advantage. The other thing is dry hopping. Now on this unit, you're going to have to vent pressure, open the lid, chuck your hops in. You can take some shortcuts by putting in a hop bag with two magnets, one on the inside, one on the outside. When you're ready to hop, remove the magnet, bag drops down, and you can hop that way. But at the end of the day, you still can't keep it for a long period of time in here when it's finished because you're sitting with the yeast and all the other bits in the actual unit. Obviously a short period, you know, it's not a hassle. On this one, again, you've rid yourself of all of those issues. Both of the units, the all-rounder and the Conical, you can use as a normal fermenter, pressurized fermenter, or you could ferment in another vessel, transfer into either one of these units and use it as a keg. So that's also another, that's hence the reason Unitank on both of them. In terms of extras that come with the units, the Conical comes with a tool basically for removing the yeast container and the lid. Like I said, make sure you purchase one of these little tools, really handy for just popping that lid out when you need to get it out. The yeast containers, you can actually buy these separate, which is nice. So you could, for argument's sake, save your yeast in one and then do a dry hop with another one. In terms of the bottom valve, when you get these units, obviously this one's easy to assemble. Literally, just put your bridle strap on, put your lid on. Always use a little bit of food-safe lubricant on the seals on both of these units. It's actually really advantageous to do that. The handles, obviously they need to be tightened up. They're identical on both units. Don't over-tighten the handles. You can deform the lid and make it difficult to get it out. This unit, you obviously need to assemble the whole valve assembly at the bottom. You've heard that old adage, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So once you're removing the valve, that's a normal right-hand type turn. This valve is quite tight to close, and actually it clicks into place. Now there's a lip, not sure if the video basically shows it, but there's a little lip, two little recesses, or how can I say, ridges is a better word, on the top, and it needs to click past those ridges, then the valve is closed. So it is quite tight, but that's why they've installed all of these extras on the actual stand. Now this unit, again, the opposite way around. So when you think you're loosening, you're tightening, and when you're tightening, you're loosening. So just remember that. Once you've got this unit, you're going to need to assemble this part. So to do that, you will need to disassemble the unit. Let's just take that out. go. Okay, remember to click this over. So when you get it, the unit is basically assembled like that. But now that won't fit through. You do need to disassemble. Click it back over. You can drop that into the unit. Drop your cone segment in. Click it down. Okay, and now you can obviously assemble this part of the system and then put your valve and your yeast container back on. Not difficult to do. The other thing I must mention, they're both manufactured from PET. They are sensitive to harsh sunlight. You do not use abrasives on these. They clean really, really easily. Nothing really sticks to them. So they're simple, easy to clean, and they're both identical from that. So there's no real differences between them. So just to summarize, you can put all the extras on both units. The Conical is a lot higher. The All-Rounder does have a larger capacity in terms of literage, 30 and 60, 27 and 55. In terms of dry hopping, you want to go with this unit. If it's ease of use, getting rid of the yeast, and long-term storage, you definitely want to be going for this unit. If it's a standard type pressure fermenter you want, and you're not necessarily fussed about hopping, All-Rounder may be a better choice for you. In terms of the larger sizes, they're pretty similar in those sort of specifications. Obviously, factor in the extras you're going to need for pressure fermentation in your budget. This will cost you less initially on the purchase, but obviously you're not getting as much as you are with this unit. KegLand does keep spares, and Millside's obviously made a real effort to make sure we start keeping all the spares. You'll notice on our website we're keeping most of the spares for both of these units now. So make sure that when you're maintaining your unit, you are obviously not stressing the unit, over pressurizing it, exposing it to excess heat, again, both of the units. Use the correct chemicals to clean them, and you're ensured of a good long lifespan on these units. I hope that's been informative and given you some idea the differences between these units and help you to make a good decision when purchasing. Thank you for your time.